Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us at this regular meeting of the Madera City Council. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mayor Andrew Medellin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cece Foley Gallegos. Here. Councilmember Jose Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Donald Hawley.
Present.
Councilmember Derek Robinson.
Present.
Councilmember Will Oliver.
Here.
And Councilmember Charles Rigby.
Here.
Thank you so much, Sonia. If everybody will stand and welcome Pastor Sammy Neely from Mount Zion Baptist Church, who will lead us in the invocation.
Let's bow our heads. Our Father who art truly in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Father, we come and stand before you today, Father, thanking you for yet another week. We ask that you look upon our community, look upon this city, Father. We ask that you look upon the families that were affected by the tragedy. But, Father, we know that you're able to help us to get through all of this, Father. Then you ask that you bless us as we go forth in the business tonight of this community. Wrap your arms around us, protect us, guide us, lead us down the path of righteousness. Father, we ask that you bless our leaders, bless all of the citizens, help the community join together for this fight against the evil. And Father, we remember to give you the praise, the honor, and the glory. In the name of Jesus we pray, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Neely. If you'll join me in the pledge, please. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving into the public comment portion, the first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked to identify themselves and state the subject of their comment. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold the comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing is opened. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. If there's anybody wishing to speak under this definition, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Kay Rhodes, and I'm a business owner in the city of Madera, actually for 31 years on November 1st. My address is 201 South Pine Street, Madera. I guess I read the paper like everybody else about what happened with the big deficit, and we all looked at your wages of the administration of this city. The last time I was here, I made the comment that shame on you for the last 15 years of how this city has been run. I asked for some money for the Friends of the Animal Shelter and was told, well, that you don't support 501(c)(3)s. Well, I can see why. And I think this council now has a chance to go forward and correct what's been done. I can see where the money went. It feathered a whole bunch of nests, This was outrageous. That you think that the city of Madera has one of the lowest populations shown in the newspaper. The only one that had less was Hanford. But our per capita income was the lowest, and our wages were by far the highest. I'm in private business, and in our line of work, you do a good job, you get the job done, then you get a raise. You don't get a raise and cross your fingers and hope to hell they do something, which they did not do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Khalid Chaudhry. I was here in the last meeting. I remember. I hope, I don't know. I don't remember. I have bad memory. I'm 55 now. Anyways, so same issue.
Your address, please, Mr. Chaudhry.
Oh, yeah. Khalid Chaudhry, 450 South Madera Avenue, Madera, California.
Thank you.
So when your ship is, loaded, about to sink, what you do? Unload. So please do unload. So same issue what Ms. Rhodes mentioned here. I was here last time too. So here, 24% increment in salary. Where this COLA come from, cost of living adjustment? What was HR doing? The person who runs HR here, what was your finance director doing? Did he point out anything? Hey, it's way above COLA, so we are going to sink. So these are my questions. And the way this, seriously, the way Ms. Rhodes mentioned, the way the city is being run, really, it's hurting our democracy. So I don't want to say more than that. You know all that very well. Thank you very much. Keep up. Thank you.
Hello, Anthony Castillo, longtime resident, lifetime resident here, born and raised, 25 years in construction, built most of Fresno, some of Madera. Address, right now I'm in between, living with my father. Yeah, I've been displaced. A lot of problems now and then, but a lot of it ain't because of me. A lot of it's because of the city, the rules, the laws. Right now mine is only about the pollution. I'm not going to say what part of town I'm from because the problem's probably everywhere. I wake up in the morning trying to breathe some fresh air, especially after the rain. I don't get it. I get toxins in the air that I can smell. And that's people contributing to the delinquency of other people and minors. And I don't appreciate that. Something's got to be done about that, because it affects all of us. I have girls, young ones. One was in softball a few years back, and at the park, I try to tell these individuals, please don't do that here. Oh, it's my legal right. It's my legal right. Yeah, but it's also your legal right to be responsible and not to let it go downwind where kids are playing softball. They're catching a contact. That's not right. And something needs to be done, especially if we're going to be having all this, brought into the community maybe. Who knows? And there has to be more laws that let them know, educate them where they can smoke, where they can't. Because that's not the only toxin that's in the air. That's bad for all of us. I just want to bring all that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Anybody else wishing to speak under public comment? Seeing none. Oops, I'm sorry.
My name is Tom De Silva. I live at 25 Point West in Madera. I read the letter in the editor by Mr. Pistoresi, and seems like the salaries are a little inflated in this community. And the one thing that gets to me is we just passed, I think, a 1/2 cent sales tax increase because we needed police and firemen. But it appears to me that what we really wanted was higher salaries for our managers. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak under public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, and I'll move into presentations. If my colleagues don't mind, I will do the next presentation here from the dais, proclaiming and promoting Small Business Saturday. We have some small business owners here in the room, and I'd like to start out by saying that small business is the backbone of any community. Small business is the backbone here in the city of Madera. Our local economy and our tax base depends on that small business. Recently, we've implemented a small business workshop here in the city of Madera to help promote new business here in the city of Madera, or expand an existing business here in the city of Madera. We are also working with an ad hoc team or an ad hoc committee here in the city of Madera to look for new and outside-of-the-box thinking ways to offer incentives or programs to, once again, be a little more business-friendly here in the city of Madera. I feel as mayor and I feel as City Hall that we need to continue to do our part. We need to promote and support the small businesses here in the city of Madera. And what I'm asking the citizens of Madera is to do the same. It's increasing almost every day. I would say at least a few times a week in speaking with my constituency that I hear about the many things that we don't have in the city of Madera. And I'm not hearing enough about the things that we do have in the city of Madera. We have some fantastic restaurants. We have some fantastic stores. We have auto dealerships. We have hardware stores. We have some great mechanics, great barbers and beauty shops. We have a place where you can get carpet and tile. We have a place where you can get an alarm for your house. We have pest control. We have in the city of Madera a number of great businesses, and it goes beyond that. We have great services in the city of Madera. We have some award-winning real estate agents here in the city of Madera. They truly are the face of Madera. Sometimes people from out of town or even out of the state, that's the first people they see are our agents. And they roll out the red carpet and they sell Madera. Our service clubs are no different. Our service clubs do not get paid for what they do. They raise tens of thousands of dollars and they invest in our youth with scholarships and programs right here in the city of Madera. And I'm asking for that same support. Those business owners live in Madera. They contribute to our economy. I'm glad, Tom, you're here, because I do want to mention a number of businesses still here in the city of Madera that are generationally owned businesses, where the baton has been handed down from generation to generation. Pearl Sheet Metal, Morgan's Garage, GBS, Seabury Copeland, Anderson Insurance, Massetti Brothers Appliance, Lee's Concrete, and Shetler Tire. I can tell you that these companies have given tens of thousands of dollars to our schools, to children that are playing a travel sport or in bobby socks or whatever. And this is a local business that's supporting, that we need to show that same support for them. Recently, the Bridge Store went out of business, but they served 89 years here in the city of Madera. So much so that they named a school after the family. And this is another business that was handed down from generation to generation. They love Madera, and they gave back to Madera. There's a lot of businesses, and I can name a lot of names, and I really purposely don't mean to miss anybody, but these businesses hire locally. They hire my kids and your kids, and they help support those families right here in the city of Madera. Recently, we are doing a pilot project with Pomona Ranch and trying to house some of the homeless. And our local police department and MPOA said we'll pitch in and we will get some furniture or clothing or something to help these folks. And the pouring in of assistance has been coming in greatly by citizens in the city of Madera. Some are just giving a few bucks to help those in need. A local business said, I will donate food to fill up their refrigerators. A local business. Not somebody online, not somebody south of us, but a local business. I got a phone call today from Stacy at Eye Candy. It's a clothing boutique off of Howard Road. And she is going on her own from business to business to business to say, let's put a map together, let's put a gift basket together, and for every person that visits all these businesses on the map will get a ticket and a chance to win in a particular drawing. It costs you nothing. But she, too, was trying to drum up business locally here in the city of Madera. So as I proclaim Saturday, November 25th, Small Business Saturday, I want to go beyond that. I want to recognize Madera for who we are and for the great things we have here in the city of Madera. And our backbone truly is that small business. So I'm urging everybody, I'm urging my fellow Maderans and my colleagues to shop locally. When possible, to shop locally. Before you pull the computer out, before you drive south, inquire about some of the things we do have here. I know it can't happen all the time, and obviously budgets are tight. But again, I urge you to support those local businesses that support the city of Madera. I will sign this proclamation. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have a Safety Award recipient. I'll ask Wendy to come up and make that presentation.
So this is just an example here. We wanted to take a moment to recognize our employee, David Huff, here in front of the City Council. He recently received an award at the board meeting for the Central San Joaquin Valley Risk Management Authority, which is a joint powers authority representing 54 cities. The authority presents annual awards recognizing individual employees in the cities that help improve risk management programs. And so all 54 cities are given the opportunity to make nominations. There were 3 awards given out of all 54 cities this year, and our very own David Huff from Parks and Community Services was one of the recipients.
Right.
We were very proud of him, and he has a very nice award he gets to keep in his office now. What David did for his department, and now we're implementing it through the city, and there's a lot of other cities contacting us wanting what David created. He created some very simple to follow and plain language flow charts for reporting incidents, accidents, injuries, anything having to do with employees or the public participating in Parks Community Services programs. This is important because in the risk management world, reporting lag times are a huge issue. We deal with it a lot, especially in small cities, because when you don't find out about something right away, it's difficult to investigate, it's difficult to know what's going on. David has created a process in Parks Community Services. He's trained everyone on it. He makes sure that all those part-time employees, maybe it's their first job, maybe it's a summer job for a high school student, they're now good at risk management, and they follow his flow chart, and everything is reported within 24 hours just like it's supposed to. It's an extremely successful program. So for that, we wanted to recognize David and say congratulations here in front of council.
Great. Fantastic.
All right, first of all, good evening, Mayor, good evening, City Council. The main purpose of implementing this flow chart here is some of the main things that Wendy mentioned himself. From this, we have noticed a huge increase in success, even with the timeline of the things being flow through as far as information. Some of the most successful things, what we notice with a lot of our part-time staff, even once they come on to being orientated, they'll face a situation, and instead of being unsure of what it is to do, they can simply look at this and follow this process, and we're able to meet our deadlines within the expected timeline given. A big thank you to our Parks Director for handing this task over to me, and then even the support that I received from our Parks and Community Service, our team as a whole, giving the input, and then also Wendy and Eugene for seeing the potential in this forum itself, so far as seeing that it's capable of receiving a reward. So a big thank you to you guys and everybody else. So thank you.
Great. No, thank you. Councilman Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, real quickly, I just wanted to say thank you, David, and not only as a council member, but as a member of Madera Glass and Auto Body's men's basketball team. We participate in the Sunday and sometimes Monday men's recreation basketball leagues, and I've seen firsthand where this process is played out, and it's played out effectively well. As you can imagine, with grown men, especially if Robert Boythorst is playing on your team, there are subject to incidences happening, especially when we're beating on teams by like 30, 40, 100 points. And so we've seen some stuff happen, but I will say that your staff, under your direction, your process and protocol, do a tremendous job. And if there are incidences that happen or ways that we can improve, you guys are on the ball looking at those improvements. And I just want to let you know that as a participant in those programs, I've seen that firsthand, and that we appreciate all that you've done. So congratulations.
Councilman Hawley.
Yes, don't sneak out yet. Hold on. I'm so proud of David. When he first got here, I went over to Parks and Recreation and looked at him and said, do you have any family members in the city of Fresno? And found out that we're related. So it makes me feel proud to see that he's doing a good thing for the city of Madera and receiving this award. Keep up the good work. Keep the family happy.
All right.
Thank you.
Councilman Rigby has a comment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take just this minute to thank you for your proclamation on the Small Business Saturday for November 25th. I want to recognize a few small businesses that we have in the crowd. First, I want to recognize a good friend of mine, Rick Patel, and thank you so much for maintaining your businesses here in Madera, your willingness to grow them, and several of the dreams that you have still moving forward. And I appreciate you and your family and the jobs that you guys have created and will continue to create moving forward. And then I also want to highlight another friend of mine who's here with his bride. They've newlyweds, Mr. Emlyn Miles Mattingly and his wife Madi. And what I value about Emlyn is so many times I'll get phone calls about people that are leaving Madera. I get a lot of harassment about people that want to get out of the city, that it's not going to grow, that it's a pit. Emlyn was a member of a very successful brokerage firm in Clovis, and he recently left that brokerage firm to come and start one here in Madera, and he brought some really great clients with him. And so, Emlyn, I appreciate you coming back to Madera, class of 1999. He's a Coyote, Mayor Pro Tem, former quarterback, and I appreciate you and your family not only moving your businesses here, but raising your children here and maintaining the type of lifestyle we know Madera can provide for people. And so, Mr. Mayor, these are the types of businesses that we want to support. And
Absolutely.
so I appreciate you inviting them tonight, as well as Mr. De Silva's here, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those kind words. Councilman Oliver.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly note, Dustin Franklin wanted to be here this evening, but he is very busy, as normal, at the Tap House. But I don't think we can take too many opportunities to highlight his success story. We've said it before, but in recognition of Small Business Saturday, he's a guy with his wife who had an opportunity to open up a restaurant here in many different markets, from Paso Robles to Clovis to Fresno. Instead, he decided to make his home here in Madera, where he grew up. He is essentially a boomerang from the area. Went and served in the U.S. military in San Diego. Came back. Went through the city's Small Business Academy. He is hiring employees as his business has seen continued growth. So I just wanted to point to his continued success and recognizing him, even though he's in his inaugural year of business. He's already looking at plans to expand his patio space to make room for that growth, as well as other different business ventures that he could bring to the residents of Madera. So he wanted to be here this evening, as well as my uncle, Steve Copeland, but I wanted to make that known.
Great. Well, we're, in a sense, glad he's not here. That means business is good, and he's too busy to get away. That's great. Thank you very much for those kind words. Councilman Hawley.
Good job, Emily. I trained that boy well. Also, we would like to also recognize our mayor, who has a small business as well.
That's right.
Andy Design. So we don't want to forget about you, because we know that you put your heart, and you're a Madera boy too. So
thank you very much, Mr. Councilman.
And
I appreciate that.
also Jose Rodriguez, who has his mortgage firm.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it's about. People staying in Madera, born in Madera, raising their families here, and opening up business to make Madera better. So it takes all of us to work together to make this happen. I'm probably the oldest one here that's been in Madera the longest. I wasn't moved here. I was born here. So just want y'all to know I am glad to see that we're still holding on, making Madera proud.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. I appreciate that. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss out. We also do have another business owner here in our audience. That's GoVet Properties, so Ginger.
Oh,
I know that real estate there is.
There she is.
And
Chuck.
I know that Donald beat me to the punch, but I was going to recognize also our Mayor Medellin and myself. And, this is what Madera is all about, is about small businesses. And keeping that tradition of really helping and expediting processes where we can help these small businesses is what we're all about. So just want to make sure, I don't know if there's any other small business owners in the Mr. Chuck Dowd. Yeah, want to recognize anybody else that we missed, but thank you for everything that you do, and that's why we have this proclamation for you guys. So thank you. Appreciate everything.
Thank you for those kind words, everybody. I really appreciate that. We will move into the consent calendar. Is there any council member wishing to pull any particular consent item for further discussion? I do show item B15 will have to be pulled. Is there any other? If not, I'll entertain a motion excluding item B15.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve consent calendar as presented, excluding item number B15.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar excluding item B15. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I need to identify that I have a legal conflict of interest on item B15, so I will recuse myself from the room while you vote.
Thank you, Mr. Tooley. There is no more further discussion on item B15, so I will entertain a motion.
So move to approve.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve item B15 on the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for that. Moving on to item C1, this is a second reading and consideration of adoption of an ordinance rezoning approximately 7,500 square feet located on the west side of North K Street. Mr.
Thank you, Mayor Medellin, council members. The council introduced this item on November 1st. It would be a rezone of a 7,500 square foot parcel on the West Yosemite Avenue corridor to the R3 residential zone district. Staff and the Planning Commission continue to recommend approval of the rezone and with the second reading, and would recommend the second reading and adoption. That completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions you might have.
Great, Chris. Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Boyle? I don't see any, so I will ask for title.
Thank you. Adoption of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Madera amending the official City of Madera zoning map, rezoning an approximately 7,500 square foot parcel located at 118 North K Street from the R2 Medium Density Residential Zone District to the R3 High Density Residential Zone District as identified within Exhibit A.
Mr. Mayor, I move to waive further reading and adopt item C1 as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to waive further reading and adopt item C1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that. Moving on to item C2, this is a public hearing and consideration of introduction of an ordinance amending Section 4-15.02 of Chapter 15 of Title 4 of the Madera Muni Code. Mr. F. Stees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with the passage of Prop 64, we have to make some changes to our current marijuana cultivation ordinance. This is how it currently reads now. It's a complete prohibition on any cultivation within the city, no matter the reason, whether it be medical or personal. With the decriminalization of up to 6 plants allowed to be cultivated, we recommend adding this language to the end of the section. So in accordance with what is expressly permitted under the state law, this prohibition will not be enforced for up to 6 cannabis plants grown within a single private legally occupied residence pursuant to a permit issued by the City of Madera. So a couple things in there. The single private legally occupied residence, this is preventing people from every single roommate saying that they have 6 plants. You can only grow 6 plants per residence. And then also requiring folks who would like to cultivate marijuana to receive a permit from the City of Madera. So also in subsection D, where what's permitted under Prop 64 is for cities to institute reasonable regulations on how those 6 plants are cultivated. So we're recommending 7 subsections that people must follow when they're cultivating those 6 plants. So the first one, obviously, that the grow must be contained in a large space, not accessible to juveniles. There should be no evidence of cultivation occurring noticeably from any public space or adjacent property. Evidence of cultivation includes the odor emitting from the residence and the visibility to the public of the plants or any of the equipment used to cultivate the marijuana. And so what we're shooting for here is obviously the folks that are going to want to move their plants out onto their balcony or move them close to the windows on a bright sunny day. Neighbors may not appreciate that, and in my business I found that once a marijuana grow has been found to be, people are aware of it, those people tend to be victimized a little bit more by home invasions and burglaries. 3, the area in which the cannabis may be cultivated pursuant to this code shall be equipped with ventilation, filtration system designed and constructed in such a manner to ensure that Odor does not escape the residence, and prevents moisture and mold from endangering the occupants of that residence. So first, there's kind of two parts in there. First is the odor escaping the residence. This isn't a very high bar to meet. If you look at the equipment on the lower left-hand corner, that's a package deal you could buy on Amazon, a ventilation fan, ducting, and a carbon filter, which filters out the odor for $160. And on the right, that's just an example of more carbon filter. And then also with an indoor grow, with the increased humidity and the heat from the lamps, mold grows very quickly. So the ventilation is important. The use of any pressurized or flammable gas products for cultivation or processing contaminants will be prohibited. So on indoor cultivation, growers typically want to increase the carbon dioxide level in the room to increase the yield and the health of the plants. This is typically done, and the two most common ways are shown here. In the lower left is a pressurized tank with carbon dioxide in it, and they simply just open the valve to release that into the room. The second is what is a CO2 generator, which you can buy for $150 on Amazon. And you hook that to a propane tank inside your house, and it's simply kind of like a constant pilot light. You see the 4 valves there that it just burns a constant flame, and when that propane burns up, it's releasing carbon dioxide into the room. And then we also talk about the flammable gas and the dangers with that. If you look on the table there, this is commonly what you see when people are trying to extract the THC from the marijuana. They'll use these butane cans, and they'll saturate the marijuana, and what kind of drips out the bottom is a sappy oil. Well, in the process while they're doing that, the vapors engulf the room, and as soon as that reaches a pilot light on a stove or water heater, or someone lights up, an explosion happens. And if you Google this, you'll see from around the valley, usually about once a month is happening, most recently one in Fresno and one in Tulare. This is a picture of one that happened a couple of years ago in the Meadows Mobile Home Park. I actually responded to this one where 4 people sustained serious burns, and the windows and doors were blown out of the residence. Pretty significant. Also to add to that, in a recent article in the Sacramento Bee, the chief burn specialist from UC Davis said that about 7% of their burn victims that show up to UC Davis are attributed to butane honey oil labs, and where most burn victims are showing up with 10% burns on their body, butane honey oil lab folks are showing up with at least 30%, and saying it's not uncommon to have 80-90% burns. So we think that's an important regulation. Any chemicals used for the cultivation of cannabis shall be stored outside the habitable areas of the residence and out of public view, and not easily accessible to children or pets. This is kind of what it kind of looks like when people grow indoors. They're storing the fertilizers and the pesticides and everything just kind of anywhere in the grow room or around the house. So alterations or additions to any portion of the residence for the purpose of cultivating cannabis shall only be done in compliance with the applicable building, fire codes, also the plumbing and electrical codes. Commonly when you go in here, you see stuff like this. They're overmaxing the breakers and running wires all over the house. They're doing power bypasses on the power. I had a neighbor down the street from me who had an indoor grow whose house caught on fire due to a power bypass because they had an indoor grow. And you obviously see the shoddy modifications that are done that obviously put people in danger and also decrease the value of the residence. And then 7, a copy of the cultivation permit issued by the City of Madera and the residence shall be displayed in a conspicuous place in the cultivation area. So commonly when we stumble upon these grows, sometimes there's people not home. It might be on a burglary or the person who applied for the permit's not there. Maybe it might be a domestic violence call and the suspect's gone. So a lot of times we don't have full information about this grow, the legality or the information. So we think it's important to be able to find out that information quickly. So also the section we're adding subsection E, which explains the penalties for violating these requirements, and it basically makes a violation a misdemeanor, and the penalties are as follows. So for each and every cannabis plant cultivated in violation of this section shall be a fine of $1,000. So if they're going above 6 plants, it's going to be a $1,000 fine per plant that they're going over. Each day a violation of this section is maintained shall be considered a separate violation and is subject to a fine of $1,000. So if they're caught with the grow and penalized and cited, and they continue and they don't come into compliance, we can assess additional fines and penalties. And then Section 3 is kind of the section that catches for any of those violations of the regulations or the requirements. And that's also a $1,000 fine. So this is kind of an example of the permit that we'll be asking people to sign. You see some of the things that we're asking them to acknowledge. The bottom few, I think, are important. Basically, we're going to be providing them with the municipal ordinance. They're going to be able to read that. They're acknowledging that they read it, the fines associated with that. And another key thing that why it's crucial to do the permitting process is that that's the only way that we get them to consent ahead of time to inspection of the grow site. So by a condition of them accepting this permit, they have to allow us to do periodic inspections if we get a complaint about their grow. And then another thing that I think is crucial for the protection of homeowners, as a narcotics agent for 6 years, I've walked many homeowners around their property after renters have destroyed them due to marijuana grows. And so we're requiring people, if they're going to get a permit and they're not the owner of the house, that they have to get expressed permission from the homeowners to cultivate marijuana in the house. And that is it, unless you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's very informative, and I have a handful of questions, but really more towards, I think for us on the dais, since we do so many neighborhood watch meetings, and it's best for us to have all this information, because I think some of the top questions are asked are about some neighbors that are doing things. So I appreciate this. But my question is, you had talked about the periodic inspections. Is that going to be done by PD or code enforcement?
Well, a couple things. I don't foresee people beating down our door to get a marijuana cultivation permit. And with our current staffing levels, I think that probably those inspections won't be done unless a complaint has been lodged or some sort of something's been brought to our attention that there's somebody's out of compliance.
And so who is going to approve the permit? Which department do we have approving the permit?
We haven't completely decided on that. That I've submitted an example permit that has code enforcement currently as a placeholder, but that actual issuing process hasn't been agreed upon yet.
Okay, and so when we do, like I said, I think it's crucial for us to have all this information so we can take it out there and explain to all of our neighbors that we say there's no call too small, and if there's something you see, to please call, so we can first of all be up on what the new law is going to be and inform them of what, of course, their rights are and what is or is not acceptable. Councilman Rigby.
Yeah, I have several questions, too. First of all, thank you so much. This is really informative. It's unfortunate that we have to make these adjustments to our code, but necessary, I understand. So kind of piggybacking off of the question that the mayor had asked, help me understand if by whatever chance we come into an indoor grow, per se, and they are they're non-compliant. They don't have their permit. It's an indoor grow, but they only have 4 plants. But is that considered non-compliant, or is that considered illegal?
Yes, to grow any plants, they would have to obtain a permit from the city of Madera. So they
So
would be
if you had a call that was in no relation to the indoor grow, let's say domestic violence, whatever, and you happen to catch at the corner of your eye 4 plants sitting on the dining room table, do you respond? What would be the response? Hey, you're in non-compliant of our code. You get slapped with the item E kind of violation, or is this illegal? You go through a whole different process.
Yeah, well, it would be legal under state law, not legal decriminalized, but it'd be an administrative penalty and the fine of $4,000 and potentially $5,000 for not growing without a permit.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that it would follow the administrative enforcement process that we have. You'd have to issue, NOV and citations and that type of thing. So, yeah. So it's like Brian alluded. It's decriminalized under state law, but the state deferred to us to regulate it in the manner we see fit within those parameters, and so. That's why we're kind of doing this as a little cleanup, but also adding the regulation part on it so we can kind of keep a lid on it.
Okay. I have some more questions, Mr. Mayor. Brian, does the cultivation permit require a visit from building code? I was noticing that there was a requirement of the floor plan per se, but I was on a ride. I was with Josie, actually, and we busted an indoor grow. And, I mean, that place was wired up, and it was in flames. And they were bringing power from a PG&E pole right outside of their house. They had literally climbed up that pole, broke into the box, and were right. So my thing is, even though they're bringing you what seems to be, cotton candy and rainbows and unicorns, it looks good on paper. Are we still sending somebody from building code out? Just because I know I do a fireworks stand every year for my youth group. And before I can open shop, before I can do anything, fire marshal has to go out there and put his stamp on it. Are we doing anything similar to that? Is that asking too much, Steve? Not that I want to put more on Steve's plate. I just want to make sure, can we beat this before anything? I'm just scared that one house goes up, 3 others go up on the block.
Yeah. Well, we definitely have the authority, and it's built into the permit to do that.
It is in the did I miss it?
Well, we have the ability to do the inspection. So if they're applying for it and saying, we'll be out in a couple days to check compliance, we can do that.
Can or will?
Can at this time.
Okay.
Depending
All
on.
right. Okay. I guess that's good. And then my final question is, if the permit is revoked, how long until they can resubmit? Does it depend on how it's revoked? They have to fix whatever?
I'm not sure.
Should we decide that?
Actually, I don't think there actually was any thought to a process for revocation of a permit.
Because it just on the application process, it does say that the applicant understands that I have to operate under what this is telling me. If I don't, I can have my permit revoked. It says here, non-refundable, even if my permit is denied or revoked. So if that happens, I pay my fees, it's non-refundable, then my permit gets revoked. How long until I can come back and ask for another one? 2 days, 3 days?
Hasn't been thought. Actually, I don't know that I think we missed that process. So,
is it a circumstance?
Can we do that tonight?
So there's very few circumstances where it would be legally allowed to deny the permit, and probably the main reason would be that when the application is submitted, the process is that we're going to be to check sure that person is the owner, or if they're not the owner, they have the consent of the owner. So property check with the county, ensuring that these folks have a legal authority or they own this property. So if we do that check and they don't own the property, or the person they're citing as the owner is not that person, then their application will be denied.
And I think as opposed to a revocation of the permit, I think the permit's a basic deal that you have to have that entails inspecting the premise. I think you are going to be found to be operating outside of the Muni Code if the premise does not meet the requirements that were identified in the new ordinance sections, all of which are, necessary to kind of maintain the grow. The permit is just kind of a way for us to be aware you have the grow. It does have a consent to, and I think we can, I guess basically we'll have to visit the revocation process. I didn't even catch that on there. And
I guess what I'm getting to, without, I guess, not really wanting to go there, but now I guess I have to. Is it one strike and you're out? And if not, do I have the jurisdiction to make it that as a city council member?
I think it's more you have to comply at all times or you will be fined for noncompliance.
But if you were given the opportunity and you had it revoked, are you no longer now allowed to ever resubmit for that permit?
That was never part of, I think, the thought process. It was if you got.
I understand that. So I'm asking, can I make it a part of that? No. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Okay. So they have to be still given the opportunity to come back.
You can't supersede state law.
I get that. I understand that.
This allows us to regulate those 6 plants. When they're in violation, it's $1,000 every day that they're not in compliance. That's the penalty that we have available to us. The revocation only can come into play when they are a renter and they do not have the permission of the homeowner to grow plants. Then we can deny.
Mayor, if I could interrupt and have the chief come up to the podium,
I'll
please.
give you a shout out
Thank
from
you.
the audience, but as you keep going, I'm going to make you come up here and get on record, Chief.
I don't want to keep going.
Too late.
But what the lieutenant said was the only opportunity we have for revocation is if they don't have authorization by the homeowner to grow plants. That is written into the law that says if you are a renter, you have to have that permission. And so we codified that. If we do that check and the homeowner is unaware, then they don't get issued a permit and they can't grow plants in that house.
If we go in and they're not up to code electrically, we cannot revoke their permit. All we can do is fine them through codes.
It's a pretty stiff fine, so.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to figure out how close to the fire I can get.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure
That's
out.
about it. I think
I'm trying to
correctly alluded to the fact that.
So there might be other issues that we could close a house down relative to code violations in the shape of a house. But when it comes to the marijuana, only under the circumstance of a renter do we have the ability to shut that down altogether. Otherwise, they are allowed the 6 plants. And all we can do is penalize them for every day that they have it.
And they're not in compliance with this code. Thanks, State of California.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Member Dillon. Brian, I think my questions was more alongside what Councilman Rigby had is in regards to, obviously there's state law that allows you to go up to 6 plants. Obviously it's illegal through the federal. But, when it comes to city, we have that ability to be able to regulate that in a permit sense, right? So, and maybe this is a question for the chief or so, but do you see anything in the horizon where, maybe state might maybe supersede local law as far as, allowing people to grow up to 6 plants? And what I mean by that is, assuming that these harsh violations or that are given to people, money-wise, I mean, you're looking $5,000-$6,000 that could happen, or even more. Could that be some type of legal action from maybe a group of people that could potentially sue maybe the city?
Well, there wouldn't be any grounds to sue us over fining them that I can think of unless we did it without proper due process. So my answer would be not necessarily.
Okay. Well, I mean,
and I will also add that if somebody's operating in violation of this code, it actually is declared to be a nuisance. And under state law, I have the ability to bring an action for injunctive relief for nuisances too. So we could also get a court order for them to knock it off, that they'd be in contempt of if they kept it up. So there's multiple multiple ways to keep it in check.
I just think my concern was more, some type of legal action against the city costs us more money than the violation that we have there. So,
No.
Good, yeah, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, this is something that's pretty big, and I don't know how that's going to be regulated. I know that you'll probably see more permits coming through. I'm not sure if that's even when that starts or when that can start. I'm not sure if that's the 1st of January. But obviously, I'd like to see how we monitor that and bring it back to the council to kind of see what's happening and what we're seeing out there. And if we are seeing any violations and how that's coming across, I'm not sure if your department will be reporting to us and giving us those statistical data.
Sure. The $1,000 per plant fine or each day, is that a number, just kind of an arbitrary number that we came up with? Is there a limit, or where did that number come from?
Well, there's this kind of gives us statutory grounds in the government code and also the penal code by us declaring it a misdemeanor at the max penalty being $1,000. So that's where.
So that's the max penalty.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Great.
the government code allows for it. So.
That was my question. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos.
Brian, Mayor Medillin kind of started my question, but the second part of it was, if we do find a lot of our residents that are growing illegally and we do find $1,000 per plant, where's that revenue going to go into, and what is it going to be used for?
My pocket? No.
It would go into the general fund, Mayor Pro Tem, and it would be used for any legal purpose of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Brian? Councilman Rigby.
Yeah, I'm curious now, are we going to keep track of if permits are revoked? Are we going to keep track of that? I know, Ginger's here, and I'm just curious, if I rent a house and I try to cultivate marijuana and my landlord doesn't know, and the revocation takes place, and I go to the next house, will that renter know that I have a history of trying to cultivate indoors, and I had a permit revoked, or not? Are we keeping track? Not really? We're not going to keep track of that? Interesting.
No.
I didn't say anything.
I know. I accepted the head nod, but then you opened your mouth, so.
That's my problem, is I keep opening my mouth.
Sorry, Brian.
So no. We will keep track of that, yes. We will know who has been revoked. But knowing when someone moves to a different renter, we won't know that. And we will not be able to provide that information unless someone asks. But outside of that, no.
Now, the permits would be public record if somebody submitted a request. If they wanted to know, I guess there'd be a way of searching certain ways. But,
okay. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Rodriguez.
I'll just add one last comment, and that's because we talked about this proclamation for businesses. I mean, you brought up a really good point about the filtration and ventilation. And obviously, I think that's another good opportunity for anybody that wants to jump on that as a business deal, because essentially you said Amazon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something local here that we can definitely do. I don't know that really strikes a nerve for some people, but obviously people will be asking for that. And I just thought I'd throw it out there. I mean, that's another small business that can potentially grow out of Madera. I mean, I'd hate to say that, but essentially, I mean, revenue's going to Amazon. Maybe you have it here locally.
There's always opportunity.
Yeah.
This is a notice public hearing, so I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the council. I do want to make another comment, though, that I mentioned earlier. We don't necessarily have to have a workshop over this, but I think the information is so very, very vital for us as elected officials and for our staff when we go to Neighborhood Watch. I think this has been a topic lately, and I think the topic is going to get stronger. So the more information that we are armed with that we can let our residents in the city know, the better we'll be. So thank you for this. Thank you for this report. If there is no longer any discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, we do have an ordinance
sorry.
title to read.
Title, please, Sonia.
Introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Madera, California, amending Section 2 of Chapter 15 of Title 4 of the Madera Municipal Code pertaining to the cultivation of cannabis.
Mr. Mayor, I move to waive further reading and introduce.
Second.
We have discussion first. Councilman Rigby.
Before I vote yes or no, I would like to ask that staff would bring this back to review. I want to make sure that, maybe by June or July, if barring anybody applies for this permit, I kind of want to follow the process closely, just to see how what we have set up is working, if the regulations are taken. But this is something I'd like to see come back. If not biannually, annually, semi-annually, I kind of want to watch this one closely since it's new.
Through the chair, council member, I would anticipate a ramp-up period. So I think June is probably a good target. We'll bring something back for you, and then you can define for us how often you'd like to revisit. Chief, you got that? The record reflects he nodded his head.
Any other discussion? I have a motion and a second on the floor to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Brian. Moving on to item D1, this is consideration of a written request by the original Madera Kiwanis Club seeking to have the city cover police and public works costs in conjunction with the Downtown Madera Lighted Christmas Parade.
I was going to start talking back there, but I knew I'd
Yeah,
get in trouble.
I saw you.
By Sonia.
I'm already in trouble.
So, Mayor and council members, this is another request by a service club to put on a parade for our city. This is the Lighted Christmas Parade. That'll be scheduled the first Thursday in December. This is an annual parade put on by the Kiwanis Club, and they are, like all past folks that put on those parades, they're looking to have the fees of police and public works waived in order to have their event. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Great, Chief. Thank you very much for that. And as I stated earlier in my proclamation, service clubs are so vital to the city of Madera. The Kiwanis Club does so many great things, and with the money you raise and the scholarships you give and the Boy of the Month program and things like that, it's just been absolutely fantastic. So we thank you and the entire Kiwanians for their service.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item D1 as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve item D1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to admin reports. Item E1 is a discussion and direction to staff regarding the structure of the Development Impact Fee Program.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a request from staff for direction as to how development impact fees should be charged and applied to public agency projects. This is a little bit unique in terms of the kinds of development impact fee questions that have been raised in the past, and even those items that we contemplated for the future. You know that we are working on a fee program update as we speak. We selected a consultant a couple of months ago and are deep into that process now, trying to refine the land use assumptions and so forth. And in addition to that fee update exercise, which is a substantial one, we also have a series of public agency projects that are pending right now. And rather than wait or assume that we can wait for the new fee structure to be in place, we'd like to consider whatever direction you choose to give us tonight to apply to those pending public agency projects, things like schools, county projects, the city's fire station, and so forth. You may or may not recognize that traditionally the city has charged governmental projects. Common examples are schools and county projects. For certain of our development impact fees in the areas that we commonly call wet utilities, mostly sewer, water, and storm drain, those are charged as connection fees or capacity fees. I think it's fair to say that as those fees are applied, it creates some confusion with our public agency partners and in more than a few instances, some downright opposition or frustration to the city's charging its impact fees. This issue isn't necessarily new. It's one that's come up over time. Back during the process of completing the fee study for the 2011 update process, that study was not adopted. We looked with our development impact fee consultant about what our options are there, and he gave us the same answer that our current impact fee consultant is giving us, which is there's really two fair ways to consider this, and you can choose to go either path. And I have not surveyed, the 500 plus cities in California to figure out which is the most common, but I have seen that agencies, the cities apply fees in different ways, both eliminating and charging certain fees to public agencies. So the one argument is that public agency projects, just like private development projects, create impacts and they need to pay the fees, and if they don't pay the fees, then that creates a hole in the funding cycle and stuff doesn't get built. That's the argument, obviously, to collect fees. The argument that we shouldn't collect fees is one that says public agencies don't themselves create any impacts. They only exist, those agencies, to accommodate the private development that otherwise occurs. And so any impacts that might be viewed are not unique impacts. They're not new impacts. They're just accessory impacts, if you will, to the private development that is already occurring. Traditionally, we've looked at the first methodology as as land use is absorbed, as parcels are developed, whatever uses they're developed with, as they are taken out of the vacant inventory, that if we don't collect fees, then we're going to end up with a hole in our funding cycle. But that's certainly not a mandatory perspective, and as we go forward in our new fee program in particular, we think it's appropriate to clarify the position that we should take, and in this case our recommendation is to clarify it in a way that says public agency projects are separate, are special, they don't create unique impacts, at least in the way that are calculated through impact fees, and that we would weight the program entirely to collect impact fees from private development. We know that would strike a positive chord with our community partners, creating a little bit easier path towards developing their budgets for their projects, and inevitably when they come to us for those connections, we wouldn't then be handing them a bill for sometimes tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. A couple of points to note. At this point, the recommendation is to limit that status to strictly public agency governmental projects. There may be others, but that would essentially be city projects, county projects, school projects, perhaps somebody like Madera Irrigation District. I know the Mosquito and Vector Control District has a city facility. Those kinds of public agency projects. The non-governmental organizational side, I'm not recommending that, but that is within your purview. My suggestion is that be addressed as part of a special consideration if you choose to do that when the actual fee update is prepared and in place.
I'm sorry, David, and you mean by that on a case-by-case when it comes?
Well, that's certainly up to you, but my my understanding, based on the feedback that we've received from the council when we've talked about economic development and fees in general, is that when the fee update, the development impact fee update is completed sometime probably in the spring of 2018, that you'll want to look at that fee program and structurally address the kinds of incentive programs that are most meaningful to the community and to your council. And that might mean, that nonprofits get a fee adjustment. It might not. It just depends on where you want to go. But we have viewed that as the best opportunity, or the most appropriate opportunity at least, to consider anything other than the governmental projects. The one last thing, and it's described in your council reports, is that there's one additional kind of fee that is charged to all kinds of developments, and that's what we call a payback fee. And that is every parcel's share of the sewer and water lines that front their properties. It's what every owner needs to be able to connect a lateral, a water sewer lateral to their property. And it essentially amounts to half of the 8-inch component of a sewer and water line. And because somebody always has to bear the cost of fronting that infrastructure, and usually it's a private party that fronts that infrastructure, when one owner writes us a check for his fair share of it, that simply cycles through and it's reimbursed back to the original party. So even though public agencies are going to be developing projects, and we're suggesting an elimination of our development impact fee, connection fee, we're not suggesting that they don't pay that reimbursement component, which almost always goes back to a previously installing developer. So with that note, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Dave. And of course, we had talked about this before. There has been some other people that came before us on council with that fine line between existing impacts and new impacts. But here, when it says schools or special districts, do we need to be a little more defined in that, or the broad scope is okay? As a for instance, does it need to be an accredited school or recognized by the state, or just I'm going to open up Andy School and I don't want fees or things of that nature?
Well, to be clear, at this point, the recommendation would apply to governmental organizations, and that would be, as relates to school in this community, Madera Unified.
Okay.
If you want to do something else, that's certainly within your purview, but at least at this point, that was what the recommendation is.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're defined, that's all. And so if it's defined as that, as somebody applies for permits, that there's really not that gray zone is what I'm after. And so as long as it's defined as such, then I'm okay with that. Councilman Rodriguez?
Yes, Dave, and what is our current practice? How do we facilitate that now? What's the process for our city when it comes to governmental agencies? Are we now not collecting these fees for?
Traditionally now, the program is when projects proposed by public agencies come before the city, we begin by assuming that the connection charges for sewer, water, and storm drain most of the time will be assessed. And those are the fees that get calculated and charged as a general rule.
Thank you, Dave.
Through the chair, and just to speak to that briefly, staff's position is that we should regard these other entities as our strategic partners. Schools are important to the community, obviously important to the community. The county provides services just like the city does. If they're simply accessory activities for development that's paying its own way, we believe you're best served by following the recommendation that David's putting before you this evening. And I could add to that, but Mr. Mayor, I won't.
Thank you, Mr. Tooley. I will ask Councilman Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the discussion, Mr. Merchant. I think it's a good one to have, and stepping back several months, we've had a series of conversations surrounding economic development and being competitive and looking at not only our impact fee structure, which we're analyzing, as well as our permitting land use fee structure, especially for small businesses. And so I think this discussion certainly complements that effort. And no doubt, a new school like Virginia Lee Rose is a catalyst for economic development and job creation and good growth, and our facilities that will, last longer than most of us. And so certainly I could see the rationale to partner there and look at some of those savings. I'm curious in looking at other communities if, maybe instead of saying, hey, if you're a public facility, we'll waive all your fees, but if you are, maybe define it by certain building types or facility types. So if you're building a fire station, which you've used for comparison purposes, that's really necessitated by the service delivery and the response times, right? If you're building a school, that's necessitated by your growth patterns and where that area of need is. But if we decide to build a new city hall for comparison purposes, but we want to go west of town and leave, where we're currently at or downtown, should we reward that decision-making with this program? So I'm curious if there's a way we could fine-tune it, especially for those professional offices, for example, that employ a ton of people, good paid people, and try to guide or incentivize that towards areas of town, whether it be our central business district or our downtown, or areas where we have existing facilities, for one, but two, would be best served by those jobs and that type of development. And I think that complements today's discussion regarding Small Business Saturday. We're trying to do as much as we can for downtown Madera, and revitalization efforts recently applied for a grant to commence that effort with our partners. But if we were to relocate or build a future City Hall facility on Yosemite Avenue, that would do a great degree of good, and so maybe we cater some of these impact fees towards those types of land use or building decisions. So I'm kind of throwing it out there. Obviously, there are, again, facilities that are necessitated by the service or growth population, but as far as those support or professional offices or whatever it might be, maybe we look at kind of incentivizing those types of projects with this waiver based on that. So I wanted to kind of throw that out there and see if you've seen other examples such as that. I know, for example, with the HUD Zone, or Hub Zone, which is a federal government program that allows local businesses an incentive or competitive advantage if they're located in certain CDBG census tracts, and they provide that incentive. Or they also have a requirement for government institutions to first look at their downtown triangles or their central business districts before deciding to relocate out of the area. And General Services Administration, oversees that. So that's kind of where I'm going with that, to see if maybe there's a way we can fine-tune it so that we don't just waive all of them, but at least we kind of guide it towards areas that could really use it. So maybe first, Dave, if you've come across any examples such as that, or
I have not seen the combination of location-based plus public agency. But as we have discussed in the consideration of potential fee programs, geographic-based fees are fairly common. It certainly could be possible to become more granular in the description of public agencies and identify essential facilities and schools as being in an exempt category, and professional offices and support in another category. I think it might be a little confusing because I think most agencies are going to probably argue that or view their facility as essential facilities or as the key facilities that should get an elimination of fees versus a support or an office use. So I'd want to be careful that we didn't create more confusion in the fee program than solving problems, but it's possible, I think.
That's certainly not my intent, is to create more confusion, but I thought it might be a good topic for discussion, especially if we can, guide those types of projects to areas that are most need, where feasible.
I agree. We had this conversation before in private, and I think even up here in the dais, that there's some possible zones of benefit, if you will, like our downtown corridor, like Gateway, like the Tozier Story Road particular area, that we would not necessarily make you go there, but these are areas in our city that certainly can use an uplift. And so if there was some sort of incentive or reason to be in those areas, I'd like to, for lack of a better term, dangle some sort of carrot that since it is a community project, that it would certainly help the community. You're absolutely right. A perfect example is having our downtown or Madera Unified School District has their particular offices or district offices downtown versus having to move in an area where we have to have a 1,000-foot tie-in to our infrastructure or things of that nature on the west side of town or on the outskirts of town. So I think it's a great avenue. I know it adds to some confusion and to some work, but I think it's something well worth the process. Councilman Rigby.
Just really quick, I want to return to the mayor's original thought of the accreditation process, or what types of places of education would we allow to honor the change in impact fees, or to honor the impact fee program that we're discussing tonight. I think that I would ask that staff would seriously consider the school of choices that we have within our city. I think moving forward, the state of California is going to begin to see more and more opportunities for school of choice to kind of come through, and I'm an advocate for that, and I think that we would be remiss if we missed the opportunity to include them in this opportunity. I mean, I just, to limit it to the Madera Unified School District, to me, feels like we would be sending the wrong message to many great educators that are in our city even now, and so I think that I would be interested in having that discussion before we approved the fee program as presented. I know this is just for discussion purposes tonight, but that's something that I would like to see built into the definition of schools.
I agree. That's a very good point. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Member Dillon. And just to go back to Councilman Rigby's comment in regards to school choice, I thought we had identified that charter schools are under the umbrella of Madera Unified. So if these are the school of choices that are going to come through, they must, I think, have to be backed by a unified school district, and I think that probably would fall into that. So I'm not sure if that's something that we need to specify, or if it's already written there that these are special school of choices that are under the umbrella of a unified district. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, Councilman Rigby.
If I recall correctly, going back and reading the minutes of that discussion, I was removed from it personally, but it was to my understanding that was for a specific case that was brought before the council for that evening, but not necessarily something that would be an umbrella statement that would cover the whole city.
Yeah, you're right. I think the way it read at the time was any school that fell under the Madera Unified School District umbrella, which, although they were approved and recognized by Madera Unified, they're still considered separate or outside Madera Unified School District. So that's why I had mentioned if they are either accredited or recognized by the state, or some sort of language that did recognize them as a STEM school or school of choice, but not necessarily anybody who just planted a sign and said we're a school. Any other questions or concerns? I know we've thrown a lot of stuff out there, and for this particular subject, it's discussion and direction. And so, Mr. Merchant, I like your recommendation. I just think we may have added to it a little bit. Anything else that needs to be discussed? And Mr. Richardson, I'm not sure if you want us to necessarily have a vote on this or just make sure that we're clear on our direction.
As long as Mr. Merchant's clear on the direction, I think you're okay.
I think what I heard is that we want to clarify, starting now, that for at least for the defined public agencies, government to government, that the fee program won't charge connection fees or development impact fees as connection fees, and that with the fee program, as we craft the specific language that makes that clear, creates the placeholder in the new program, that will clarify the wording as to the specific school applicability that would capture that benefit. The only point of uncertainty is whether there was, on the location-based issue that Councilman Oliver described, whether there's something that in the near term that we can capture, or that you wanted to try to capture, or whether that's something that we can handle as part of the fee program when it comes.
I think we need to chew on that aspect a little bit more. And as I mentioned, for facilities that, again, are required by a particular service, or, if it's a school site, I think I'd be good to move forward there. And so with the two examples that you've presented this evening that are pending, which I would imagine that you're looking for some direction there as to how to best move forward with them, I would be amenable to that. But before we do a blanket, government to government, waiver, I think we should chew on that aspect to see if there's further definition we could provide as we've discussed, if that makes sense. And I certainly echo Councilmember Rigby's comments too, and I don't think that's unreasonable either. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've got it. And we have the recording if I don't.
You can go back and listen to that. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Medellin. So my understanding the last time that we had the impact conversation there, were we not going to incentivize certain businesses or entities that would come into Madera and provide services such as what we are speaking about here? And if so, is that something that we take on separately from this, or is that something that we want to add to this? From my understanding, your recommendation is to do government, and I think you described there the city and the government building. So this other proposal, is that something that can also be part of that discussion that we had with incentivizing certain businesses that come into town by reducing certain fees, whether it be connection fees or what have you?
What we are working on a separate but parallel process is to consider how our permit processing fees affect new development, and to come up with some specific incentive programs in that capacity. So that's occurring. Now we're talking about governmental development impact fees, and then eventually in the spring we'll bring back the whole fee program, where you'll have the opportunity to consider whether some more significant or broader based adjustments or incentive programs are appropriate.
So at the moment that we discussed regarding these incentives for reduction of fees, is that not something that we can also open up to these particular organizations or businesses that tie into this? Or is this something that we want to do altogether? Maybe I'm misunderstanding here.
You can. My recommendation has been that when we're talking about using our development impact fee program as a particular kind of incentive or an incentive tool, that you have in your hands an updated fee program so that you know what the current cost of doing business are, and then you can make decisions accordingly as to where you might be willing to make adjustments to try to achieve certain benefits. So you could attack the question of incentivizing businesses now, but I think in the prior discussions, the recommendation has been to wait until you have the new information in your hands and then take it from that fresh perspective.
I agree, and I think for efficiency purposes to do so would get us to the goal line quicker.
Thank you, David.
Any other questions? Thank you for that report, Dave, and I think we're good. If not, as you said, you can play it back. Moving on to council reports. I'll start to my far right with Councilman Robinson.
Yes, last Monday I attended the CalPERS board meeting. Every 4 years they have this board meeting to decide what direction they're planning to go into. Like, for instance, the candidate portfolio is assets allocation of a preliminary candidate portfolio. And they have 4 categories, A, B, C, and D. The components are global equity, private equity, fixed income, real assets, real estate, infrastructure, inflation assets, and liquidity, expected compound return, 1 to 10 years, long-term expected return, blended return, expected volatility, and cash yields. The pension, why is it so important to address? Defined benefit pension plays a vital role in attracting and retaining public employees. Many cities, however, face increasing challenges funding these benefits while maintaining level of public service their residents expect. Employer contribution rates have increased dramatically in recent years and will continue to do so for years to come. In 2012, the legislature adopted more reasonable and sustainable benefit tiers for new employees, let you know already. However, it will take decades for those cost savings to be realized, and it is critical that all stakeholders work together to address these challenges head on in order for local agencies to continue to provide quality service while retaining our value employees. So you know it was established in 1932, CalPERS. It has over 1.7 million individuals. How is CalPERS funded? 26% is CalPERS employers' contribution. CalPERS member employees are 13 cents, and 61% is investment earning. Does CalPERS have enough cash on hand to pay promised benefits? CalPERS is not fully funded as of July 2017. CalPERS only has 68% of the fund required to pay estimated retirement benefits. That means there is only 68 cents for every dollar needed to fund retirees' benefits. I'm just going over it to refresh your memory.
We appreciate it.
CalPERS goal is to be 100% funded. Experts warn that the system may no longer be viable should the fund drop below 50 to 55% funded. What are the contribution payment? Why are they increasing? Several factors are resulting in increased employer and, in some cases, employee contribution. A primary reason for the increase was the economic downturn in 2008, when CalPERS suffered a 27% negative return with a gross impact of a 34.75% loss to the fund. But other factors include enhanced pension benefit authorized by state law in 2000 for public safety employees and 2001 for all other public employees, which included a retroactive credit for years of service. Subsequently, these enhanced benefits negotiated locally have increased member agency contribution rates and payment to retirees. People are living and drawing pension longer. CalPERS has increased rate for member agency to adjust for longer lifespans. There are fewer active employees for each retiree. In 2001, there was 2 active workers for each retiree. By 2016, that dropped to 1.3, and CalPERS projects that in 10 to 20 years, there will be just 0.6 active workers per retiree. Fewer people paying into the system mean higher contribution rates from local agency and their employees. When CalPERS lowered its investment return target, also known as the discount rate, member agency must increase contribution to make up the differences. CalPERS dropped the discount rate from 7.75% to 7.5% in 2014, and then to 7% in 2016. This last adjustment will be phased in over 8 years, with the member rates rising exponentially each year. What is at stake for cities and their employees? Growing employer contribution are having a direct impact on city residents and employees. Difficult choices will have to be made at the local levels as cities work to maintain critical services for their residents. Each city will need to assess its own liability to determine several factors, including the overall service model and which public services may need to be reduced. Identification of new and additional revenue sources, and revisions to employee benefits and staffing levels. So collaboration is the key to the system's sustainability. Our message, for the board was, for instance, Madera is struggling with the pension rate increases, which may lead to elimination of services, hiring freeze, layoff, and the city has already made significant sacrifices to strike balance of providing good jobs and public services. So but we emphasized what our city was doing. At 68% funded, which simply cannot weather another market downturn if the assets allocation were to be overextended in aggressive growth vehicles. Under the current system framework, employer would make up the difference in benefit payoff. However, the just pay more option is no longer viable. It is imperative that all stakeholders work collaboratively to address this challenge holistically instead of fixating on one solution. So the City of Madera stands ready to do that. And as such, our options should be on the table as we try to assess our service need and protect our employees. But the city must be given more tools locally to enable flexibility at the bargaining table. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report and that information. And as you know, I think there's even the economists are saying there's another economic downturn on the horizon. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And we'll see where that leads us. But thank you for that report. Mayor Pro Tem.
Busy with all these neighborhood watches that are happening, which is great. But on Saturday, my colleagues, Councilman Hawley and Councilman Rodriguez, were with me at the great ceremony for our veterans, salute to our veterans. So at this moment, if you would give me just a minute, Mayor Medillin, to have anybody in the audience or on the dais around me that was a veterans to please stand up, and we'd like to give you a thank you and a round of applause if you're a veteran.
Thank you very much for that. Councilman Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am happy to report back from our Pomona Ranch project that we are getting ready to launch. As you know, we also serve on the Housing Authority Board as as commissioners. I as the chair, and I am thrilled to announce that this Friday we're going to be moving in our first homeless family into the Pomona Ranch project. I don't want to disclose any names at the moment, but rest assured by this Saturday there will be 3 families under a roof, and approximately 8 children will have a nice warm place to sleep this winter. We're overwhelmed with the amount of support that we've gotten, not only from the Madera Police Department, but as well as from private entities and those that have been sitting at the table with us for well over 8 months now. And I can tell you that we scurried around quickly to find, you had mentioned earlier, Mr. Mayor, that a member of our community had offered to fill the refrigerators of each of those families, and for $100 for each family, we're going to not only get the refrigerators filled, but the food bank is going to supplement whatever can't be bought at the supermarket at that time. We're in the process of trying to get 4 other families in before the first week of December, but I'm absolutely thrilled that this is something that we're getting ready to launch. And so if you're not busy, I would invite you out to Pomona Ranch at 11:30, my colleagues especially, and I'm sure that family could use some help, maybe moving in some boxes or whatnot. But I'll be out there and would love to show you around the premise and kind of give you an idea as to what we're looking to do for the next 6 months to help get these people back on their feet and into something a little bit more stable as they move forward, wanting to grow healthy lifestyles and stronger families. So.
You know, that's the key, Mr. Councilman. I'm glad you said that, because it's not just about putting a roof over their heads for the wintertime. It's about giving them a hand up, and there's jobs available for them. We're getting kids back in school with the proper nutrition so that they can learn and continue to be successful in school. And so there's so many facets and great things that are happening. And talk about collaboration, there's been a number of people that have stepped up to the plate.
People and
agencies. To where we are.
Yeah.
And agencies, you're absolutely right. And so I know you guys call it a pilot project, but I don't know of anywhere else in California that does something like this or that has done something like this. So I think you guys are really, being the leaders in moving forward and addressing homelessness one family at a time. So thank you so
As
very,
much as
very
I would love to toot our horn, Mr. Mayor, this is actually something we've seen happening in Southern California as well as in Northern, but we are the first in the Central Valley to utilize
Fantastic.
OMS housing for homeless opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Councilman Hawley.
Oh, yes. I had a wonderful week. As you know, the schools are now having their spelling bee, and I was able to judge a couple of days here at Rose Elementary. That's a joy to see kids stand up in front of a crowd or their peers to try to spell a word. And it goes over and over, and to watch the nervousness of them, but they get it done. So for 2 days, I've been at Rose Elementary handling that, and I think it's an awesome thing. The main spelling bee for all the schools when they come together is going to be January the 25th, somewhere here in the district. I don't know exactly where they're going to hold it at yet, but so that's a joy. That's one thing I did. Also, Second Missionary Baptist Church had their 96th church anniversary, and I'd like to thank our mayor and our mayor pro tem for joining me. I know they had a good time because their spirits was jumping with the songs and the crowd, and food was good if you didn't get to eat. But it was an awesome day over there. Also, we attended the veterans. Sometimes we don't know how much our veterans have done for us and what they're still doing. This Saturday at the VA hospital, they're having a memorial service down there for veterans to honor them at 10 o'clock in the morning if anybody would like to attend. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Member Dillon. I had an opportunity to attend the local Child Care and Development Planning Council. And frankly, I walked in there not really knowing much about it, so I think, they really impressed me as far as how they utilize these funds to really help out these child care facilities and what they're using, and as far as monitoring to help these facilities get a little bit more training as far as looking at child development so that these kids can grow up and become productive kids here in our community. But anyhow, I also wanted to wish you all, staff, my council, I don't know that if I'll see you next week, but I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys have a safe and happy
Come to
Thanksgiving.
your house.
Well, I don't know that I invited you, but I'll be out of town. So anyways, if I don't get to see you, I hope you all have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. So
likewise.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Thank you very much for that. Councilman Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, yesterday evening I had an opportunity to join yourself and Councilmember Foley Gallegos for our first Riverview Drive Neighborhood Watch meeting. In fact, one of the hosts is actually my T-ball coach going back 25 years ago, and just speaks to the privilege of living in a small, tight-knit community such as ours. Very productive meeting. A lot of great questions were asked. More importantly, as I've seen, especially in some of the newly formed neighborhood watch groups in my district and around the city, it's less because of a dramatic burglary happening on the street or some negative call to action moment, but more of residents wanting to buy in and taking ownership and engaging their respective neighbors and as well as their police officers and other city departments. So I was proud to see that, and I think this is going to be a group that will be able to sustain for a very long time. And then today, so the city of Madera has representation on the San Joaquin River Conservancy. This is a regional government agency that's tasked with developing and managing the San Joaquin River Parkway, which is a planned 22-mile natural and recreational area in the floodplain to allow for public access, recreation, restoring riparian areas, and floodplain habitat. And there has been a project in the works for nearly 15 years as part of the River West master plan in the Eaton Trail extension project. So today, at our meeting, which was 7 hours long, we voted to adopt and approve the final environmental impact report for the Eaton Trail project. We had some very spirited and lengthy discussion as to access and where to allow vehicular access and the ways to do so. So we'll be bringing that particular aspect back to the board next month. But we were proud to vote unanimously to approve that environmental impact report, which was a very long time coming. And I think the consensus for all was to ensure that there is access for this would primarily serve the directly the residents of Fresno to have that direct access, but it's a regional amenity. And it's a very long day and long meeting, but it was.
It's still going.
It's still going. Yeah, you might hear it on the news, but it was a good exercise. I was proud to be there.
Thank you very much for your service. I appreciate that. I'll be very brief. Neighborhood Watch I think we're creeping up to 90 neighborhoods now, 88 or 89 neighborhoods. It's just been absolutely incredible to have that engagement and communication with our neighbors. Tomorrow, Chief, is the 8th Academy class graduation. Is that right? I won't make you come all the way up here. You can say it from there. Fantastic. Tomorrow evening you have your eighth class. And so we appreciate that academy that you have. I think people walk away with the same mentality. I had no idea. And we talked about it today at something brand new that we had done at Madera High School, where Mr. Tooley had engaged Mr. Richet and brought together some high school students from both Madera High and Madera South for just such an academy. It's a little bit condensed version, but 17 and 18-year-olds in a room that are totally engaged and wanting to learn about the process. They had some fantastic questions for us, and some of them are going to go on to be political science majors, and I can really just see our future leaders. And so I want to thank Councilman Rigby and Councilman Oliver for joining me, and Mr. Tooley. And also Joseph was there with our slideshow presentation. We can't start that process too early. So from our academy we have here to our PD Academy, I want to thank everybody involved for making that such a successful program. And then, Donald, you're absolutely right, Donald. I was happy to join the Second Missionary Baptist Church for their 96th anniversary this last Sunday, and I truly was filled with the Spirit. I mean, there's a lot of camaraderie and fellowship, and it just happened to be 2 doors down from where my grandmother lived for a number of years. And so I as a kid, I grew up a little bit in that area, and it was fun to see some family members and things. So we congratulate Second Missionary Baptist Church and look forward to another 96 years. With that, I will ask Mr. Richardson to make an announcement.
Pushing the wrong place. Sorry. All right, Mayor, the council will now adjourn to closed session in 2 items. The first being conference of labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The parties and groups are as listed on the agenda. Second is conference with legal counsel and anticipated litigation. That's initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9 in one matter.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Yeah,
Derek's
exactly.
here. We got a quorum.
Are we ready?
Mr. Richardson.
Okay, Mayor, the council adjourned to closed session in 2 items. The first being conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. No reportable action was taken. The second being conference with legal counsel and anticipated litigation. That's initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of Section 54956.9. In one matter, no reportable action was taken in that matter either.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a pleasant evening and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.